Welcome to the Winning Edge Investments Podcast. Winning Edge Investments provides industry-leading horse racing and sports betting tips, ratings and education, enabling you to invest intelligently and treat your betting like a business. Go to www.winningedgeinvestments.com to learn more about how you can start to supercharge your betting bank immediately. Treat your betting like a business and invest intelligently with Winning Edge Investments.
Dylan Gibbons, thanks so much for joining me, mate. It's been an astronomical rise over the past couple of years. I've had the privilege of being able to watch you from your first ride, which I clearly remember. And on the weekend, you've just come through with 4 more winners and ridden off your claim, all of them from wide draws. Mate, thanks very much for joining me.
Yeah, it's great. Happy to be here.
And speaking of astronomical rise, the Group 1 win, congratulations. It was enormous, and it was a heck of a ride and a heck of a win, mate. How'd you feel post-race?
Yeah, it was a bit of a whirlwind of emotions. It's one of them things everyone says, you can't explain it, but you really can't. That sort of last 50 metres, that was a bit of an out-of-body experience, and I wasn't in control of what was happening, so my emotions just took over.
In terms of Explosive Jack, were you going in with a level of confidence, or were you just thinking, we'll see how we go with the ride? What was going through the head sort of pre-race?
Yeah, it was funny because obviously he had a good record of winning derbies and them sort of big races, but he obviously had a long time off, and his form went into it. Wasn't terrible, but he was just sort of around the mark and never really had a flashing light on him. So going into it, it was probably the first Group 1 I went into a bit more relaxed and just sort of, everything was just a bit of a blur. It all went pretty quick, and, I just cruised around, and probably 100, 150 metres out, something just switched, and I went, might win my first Group 1 here.
Yeah, and you could certainly see you're pretty stoked past the line, and as you should have been. Kieran and Dave, they're geniuses. They've got some state-of-the-art stuff going on. How are they to work for?
Oh, they're unreal. It's amazing for such a big operation. They're both, so casual. It's just they're like two blokes you run into at a pub on a weekend. They're very casual, and they make the job easy because, they very rarely get it wrong. So when you turn up riding their horses, you can be pretty confident that they're spot on, and you just got to make sure you go and do your job, and the rest will fall into place.
Yeah, well, they've got a record that speaks for themselves. And speaking of records as well, mate, you're riding at 20% ROI at Randwick this year. So you're loving the course there. On the weekend, 4 winners, all from wide barriers. So you just seem to be able to put them in spots. And I've watched most of your rides over the past couple of years you've been doing it. And it seems to remind me of good AFL players where I think time seems to go slow for them, and I feel when I watch you when you're riding, it looks like you're making decisions and everything else around you's moving quite slowly when it's obviously an extremely fast-paced event. What's going through your mind when the barrier's open? Do you have a specific routine in your head where you're talking to yourself, or is it all just second nature and you're sort of just going through the motions? Is there a lot of vocal chat in your head?
Yeah, I do a little bit. Obviously I go out and have plan A, but as most people know, a lot can happen when the barrier's open. So I go out there with my first game plan, and when the gates open, I have a quick decision to make. And U-Court is probably a prime example. I didn't know how much speed there'd be, but I didn't want to be dragging him right back. But also I had to take into account that when I rode him and didn't really give him a chance to travel, he didn't finish off and finished 9th. Where when Danny rode him and allowed him to travel, he obviously went and won a listed race. So he's probably a good example, because as he jumped well, and I went, well, I'm going to have to be forward now instead of going back. And the way it turned out, they sort of had a bit of pressure and just split, and I was able to tuck into a lovely spot, and from there, he was able to travel lovely for me and be really dominant in the end.
Yeah, it was an impressive weekend again. And post-race, mate, was there anything to celebrate when you have sort of a 4 winners? Was there anything on for the night, or are you pretty knackered?
No, I'm pretty knackered. 10 races is a lot, especially at the end of the week. So I look forward to my Sundays off so I can get a nice sleep in. So if I try and celebrate, the first 2 drinks normally put me to sleep anyway.
And in terms of outside of racing, just before we get into the other questions, I know you're not too bad at golf. Is this true?
I wouldn't say I'm not too bad. I go and play flat out like I'm all right, but I'm slowly getting.
No, that's good. It's always good to have a bit of a balance going on. I know you did Wyong trials this morning, mate. Was there anything that caught your eye there that you're pretty keen to get on the back of again?
Yeah, there's a couple of nice 2-year-olds I trialled for my boss, Chris. Viaconi, another one called Impus, and they both trialled nice, both quite raw. And we got one there for Lloyd Williams. He probably won't show much till he's getting close to 3,200, but he's a very nice horse, and I think once he gets a few runs in and gets up to his right trip, I think he's a nice horse.
And you mentioned Chris with Boss. I know you've had a lot to do with him over your rise. In terms of influences and people that have, I guess, taken you on this journey since you've been quite young, who do you think are the most influential people? I know obviously Chris Lees would be one of them, but who would be a couple others you think?
Obviously Dad's been great to me, but the spot I'm in there, it's been perfect. Chris has got some work riders there, Cameron Swan and Mal Alton, who both when they rode were very good jockeys and have turned into very good work riders. So I've always had a pretty good base there, but it's hard to say that there's a lot of great people I've been involved with, and that's mainly through who Dad's been close friends with and been able to bounce off them. So I don't want to sit here and name them because if I forget someone, I'll kill myself. So there's been plenty of good people, and yeah, look, I could sit here all day and name them all and name what they've done, but just from day one, probably Dad and the crew he's had around and just being able to latch onto them has probably been the biggest influence.
And in terms of the future, mate, because you've just outridden your claim, so congratulations. For anyone that isn't aware, you've got to get a couple of kilos off as an apprentice, and anyone that watches racing, mate, they've wouldn't be able to avoid your name. You've gone from the country tracks and are killing it in town at the moment. So how are you feeling moving forward? What's the goals for the next year or so? Do you have any races in mind or things you'd like to win?
I should hopefully go to trial Explosive Jack at his next trial, so I'd love to be able to keep the ride on him and hopefully follow him to the first Tuesday in November. But look, that's a pretty big goal, and I've got a long career to try and chase that. But the probably short-term goal is to, now I've lost the claim, try and really establish myself in Sydney and just make sure I've got a good base there and don't sort of lose the quality of rides I was getting with the claim, which was easy for people to put me on with the claim. But now I haven't got it. I've got to try and really knuckle down and get people on board that I can do it without a claim and yeah, hopefully just get a spot in Sydney and go from there.
And your record speaks for itself this year and over the past couple of years across all the grounds, really. I know you've got a couple of good mates as well. You're pretty good mates with a couple of the other apprentices, is that right? And Tyler's been riding super as well.
Yeah, me, Tyler, Zach, Reese, even some of the other younger boys who ride in the bush and that, we're all great mates because we're around similar ages and have a lot in common. We all love playing golf or getting home on days like today, and we'll get on Xbox or PlayStation and get on there and terrorize each other. So yeah, we get along pretty well. It's we have everything in common, and it just helps having people the similar age who just love everything as much as you.
Yeah, in terms of ages, when you first got started in the jockeys room, how did it feel? Was it a bit daunting, or was it sort of straight into it and everyone was what was going through your head when you first started with that?
Well, I was pretty lucky because obviously Dad's rode, so
yep.
Any chance I had, I'd go to the races and sit in the room with Dad, do his gear. So for me, it probably wasn't as daunting because I spent so much time in there and sort of build a relationship with them boys. But from watching the other kids, I could imagine it can be quite daunting. But even when I started riding in Sydney, I didn't mix with them boys too much. So it is a little bit daunting because you know how good they are and they're established and don't really want to lose their seat. So you feel like you're treading water there. So it's it's a bit of a hard thing to do, but you just got to knuckle down and get it done.
And with the older jockeys, is there any sort of ones you're good mates with?
Yeah, I get along great with a few of them. Who would I say the better ones? Kieran McAvoy, Tommy Berry, they've been great to me. A couple of times before I was riding, they flew me up to Queensland to do their gear, and you got a fair few boys in the provincial room who do come to town. But you got Rory Hutchings, Lee McGorrian, Kobe Jennings, Ash Morgan. There's a fair few boys there I get along with great, and through similar things we all love racing and love a bit of golf. So there's plenty of us there that have a good bit of banter and do all the things we love.
Yeah, nice one. And with behind the scenes, because I know that we don't really see it, especially as just watching on. We turn up on the day, we watch what we visually see, but there must be a stack of work that goes on behind keeping fit, making sure you're not injured. So how much of the level of training is behind the scenes and looking after the body?
Look, I'm a bit different than most. I don't really do any extra training, but while I'm an apprentice, I got to ride track work 6 days a week. So that's enough for me, because then I've got trials and races, and on the days off, it's more about just trying to keep the mind right. I find that's why I've picked up golf and try and play golf as much as I can. Because if you just sit home and things aren't going great at the races, you can sort of get stuck in a bit of a rut and get down on things where having that hobby, it just helps you get away and freshen up the mind. So I more just try and look after the mental health side of it, and along with that, just try and make sure I eat well and look after the body that way.
Yeah, you mentioned the mental health side. In terms of say a tough day, is it just getting away and maybe doing something else like golf that helps, or just trying to push on? What do you do personally if you've had a tough day?
Yeah, I try and avoid social media. That's the first thing. It's quite a toxic place if you have a bad day. So when you have a good day, everyone wants to be your friend, but as soon as you have a bad day, not many of them are there to try and pick you up and want to just put you down for it. So I try to avoid social media, and from there, I just talk to the main people who helped me about what went right, what went wrong, and then through discussing it, you don't look at it as such a negative, and you can just turn into a learning curve. But I've sort of been trying to work on not letting them days, get me down too much, and I'm starting to get pretty good at it now. So you just try and take every bad day as a learning curve, and from there, you don't really have a bad day.
Yep, love it. Totally agree there. And as I mentioned at the start, I've been able to watch pretty much every race meet you've done since you started. I remember the first ride was, I think it was a fluoro green or something. One of the star something was the horse's name. Yeah, that was the one. Was certainly getting riled up pre-race, I remember. But yeah, I've been able to watch almost all of your rides since then, and as a general a form analyst and watching on, I've had enormous success backing yourself. So I started to take interest when you were in the country, and followed on. Every man and his dog, I was saying you'd be the next J-Mac 2 and you'd be in town soon, and sure enough, it was sort of 6 months later, my mate started messaging me and saying, Dylan Gibbons has got to town. And I said, yep. And it didn't take you long, mate. You were pumping out the winners very quickly. So, yeah, it was really good to see and see that rise. And I spoke to Anthony Manton yesterday, and he said the same thing. He was just saying it's good to watch from a young age. And he said he watched Reese as well, sort of just up in Wagga, just getting winner after winner. And yeah, it's good to see you come to town and both of you flying, which is great. In terms of trainers, we spoke about Dave and Kieran, but Jean Bake is flying. How are the celebrations on him? Do you get to see him any behind the scenes?
Yeah, he's an absolute animal, especially if he has a big day, and then when you walk out and you find him in the bar after and he's had a few drinks, he's quite the character. He's taken my granddad, usually comes to the races with me a fair bit, and he's taken my granddad under his wing and make sure everyone knows that he's Dylan Gibbons' granddad, and so he's quite the character.
He's in a rich reign of form at the moment. He's absolutely flying. Are there any other stables you reckon right now are just having a really good run that you can think of?
You probably hit the nail on the head with Bjorn. He's obviously a very good trainer, but I don't think I can recall him having such a good run, especially in town. So he's probably the hot hand at the minute.
Yeah, and a lot of those rides seem to be at big prices. He just seems to be ending the card in Sydney all the time with a $20 winner. The past couple of months, that just seems the routine. He's absolutely flying with your races, mate. Do you go back and watch much and critique, or do you just kind of mentally store it? What's the process there? Do you watch a lot of replays?
I do. It depends. If I have a bad day, I sort of know what I've done wrong, so I try not to watch it straight away just to make sure I don't get down. But I am quite a hard taskmaster on myself. I can find sort of any little nitpicking things and get myself quite down. So I actually have trouble of putting myself down too much. So I do watch a fair few replays, but it's all just about timing when you watch them and go through them. And if you've had a good day, I don't mind getting home and flicking them replays back on like last Saturday. But the same sense, the way I look at it, I got 4 winners. It was a great day, but there was the other 6 that didn't win. And, you can always look at where you went wrong there, or if you gave them every chance, and just making sure you're dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And I felt I did a pretty good job of that Saturday. So if I can just try and do that as much as I can, that's when I seem to ride best and seem to ride off feel. And, thankfully things went my way.
When you're in the finishing line, sort of say 400 or 500 meters out, because it's tough for anyone sort of watching to know, but how good are you at being able to judge now how far out you are? Do you just know exactly where you're at most of the time, or?
Yeah, once you ride at tracks enough, you can just ride off feel, and yeah, you probably, like, if you sat there and tried to say what mark it was, you'd be close without obviously nailing it on the head. But yeah, once you do, you just get a feel for it, and when you need to get going and when not to. And it's sort of all about how the tracks are shaped too. You got Rose Hill, it's got a long sweeping corner, so you don't want to be doing too much from as soon as you start turning until you straighten. Where Randwick, it's a little kink, you got a nice straight run and then you turn again. So Randwick, sometimes you can cover as much ground as you want and you still don't lose too much. So it's more or less just knowing how the tracks are laid out and working out where to go from there, and when you can sort of make up ground and when you can lose it.
Yeah, and you've obviously done a stack of tracks over time now. Is there anywhere in particular you just love riding at, or feel you've got really good success at? I know I did touch on Randwick before.
Yeah, I think I've found Canterbury quite good. I've been lucky that obviously with a claim through winter it helped, but sort of with the rail out, I don't mind riding for luck a bit, and sometimes the rail can be fire there. So found I had a bit of success at Canterbury too. Had a couple rough days at Rose Hill, falling short with a fair few seconds, so it still haunts me a bit, that place. But yeah, probably Canterbury and Randwick I've had a lot of luck at so far.
Yeah, I noticed with Canterbury, you do tend to send them forward a lot, and I guess that's the spot to be most of the times of that track, isn't it? Playing on speed. As a rider, do you have anything you specifically is the aim when you go out there? Is it to get into a good spot? Is it to get the horse into a good rhythm? What's the main thing when you get out there? Is it just find a good settling position is the first thing?
It depends. There's a lot of factors that go into it. Like sometimes you can, say you're at Canterbury with the rail out and you need to be on speed or on the fence, but you're drawn out wide, and you got to weigh up a lot of things. Like your horse might not be at the point of its preparation where it can afford to do that. So you just got to cop your medicine and make sure it's happy, and just be aware of those little things. And if they probably can't win due to the track, just make sure you see how they feel and how they go, and just reassure the connections after, that track played against them, but today wasn't his day, and then normally next day they come out and run well. So there's a lot of factors to weigh up. You've got to see where your horse is at, how the track's playing, where you want to be, where's going to suit it. And sometimes you can get too caught up in worrying about how the track's playing. And for example, Randwick the other day, first 2 races, it looked like the fence was going to be fire, and then on Chase My Crown, it just didn't suit her pattern to try and ride it to that, and I had to be 3 wide line with cover. And as it turned out, she'd come down the outside and absolutely bloused them. So little things like that, you just got to be careful, because if I tried to get too cute and ride her to get to the fence, she probably doesn't get clear running and probably doesn't even run top half. So it's just a matter of weighing up where your horse is at, and making sure you're doing what's best by them. And sometimes that might be having to ride them against the pattern to keep them happy, and then hopefully next day they can come out and run well.
And the one you mentioned, good win for the family, wasn't it? Because you've got a good association with the trainers. Is that true?
Yeah, not only Wayne, Adam as well. I've known both of them before I was even old enough to know who they were. So they've been great long-term friends. Dad's had a good association with them, and it's rolled on to me. But Wayne took me in pretty much as his own, and for a good month or 2 there, he'd bring me to track work, put me on whatever, and if they went flat out with me, he wouldn't get upset with me, but he'd just make sure, I learned from it. And, through a lot of horses bolting on me, I eventually picked it up. And, if I didn't have him there to let me go out there and learn without having to sort of cop a grilling for it, I probably wouldn't have been able to gain the confidence I did to get the ball rolling. And like ever since I've been riding, he'll try and book me or Dad for pretty much everything. And through that, been able to have a lot of winners for him. But it was great to finally win a race of a bit more prize money for him and just have a bit more magnitude to it. And same with Adam. I've known him from a very young age. There's pictures of me as a little baby and him holding me. So to win races like that for them guys who I've built not only a professional connection with, but also a personal one, it just means that a little bit more.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine. And just we did touch on before bias, so I just want to ask you, do you think it's overplayed a little bit, or do you think it's really important? And in terms of what you said as well, sometimes jockeys might just revert to the bias a bit too much. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it's obviously a massive point, but sometimes they can really overlook it. Like you see days after 2 races, they say the fence is no good when both the favourites have been 3 back, 1 off and come down the middle. They're of course not going to get near the fence. So sometimes I find people worry about it way too much and they look into it as if you need to just go exactly to that. But on a 10 race card, if the first 2 have gone that way, it doesn't necessarily mean it's like that. And look, no doubt it can have a massive impact. There's some days you watch races and, being the fence to 1 off, there's only half a metre between it, but it can mean the world. But like I was saying before, you got to weigh up your horse and, sorry about that. Got to weigh up your horse and where they're at in their preparation and what's going on. And, majority of the time, most of us are aware to the pattern, but, that's where the media can be a bit harsh. You get on there and we cop abuse for not riding to it where it just may not suit your horse to try and to get to where the pattern needs to be. So it no doubt needs to be looked at, and, we all need to be aware of it because sometimes it can be worth a fair few lengths. And sorry, people are ringing. And, from there, you can just cause more trouble trying to get to a pattern where, like I said, for example, Saturday, first 2 races looked like the fence was fire and then a couple started rattling down the middle. So, you can overlook it definitely, but it does also need to be looked at.
And just to finish off, I know you've been on some gun horses across the time and of course giving them every chance more often than not. Who are you looking forward to riding coming up over next couple of months, next year or so, apart from Explosive Jack, who we touched on? Who else you can get on the back of?
It's a good question. Chris has got a couple of nice ones there going through their grades. Just trying to think what else I may have maybe lucky to get a sit on. Be nice if Osmosis comes back and J-Mac doesn't ring up for the ride. So there's a couple there I've got to worry about hopefully getting back on, but it'd be exciting if I could keep the connection going with him. And then sort of Chris has got a couple imports there that are just starting to get into their work. So it'd be interesting to see how a few of them step out.
Yeah, Osmosis looks pretty exciting. Do you know any word on when that might be back?
Not sure. Bjorn will assess that and see how long he needs. He's still only a young horse, so I'm sure the more they look after him, the more they'll get out of him.
Yeah, he's got a few guns waiting in the stable, John. He's stable airborne. Well, mate, I'll let you go. But look, thanks so much for the chat and good luck with everything coming up over the next couple of months and next year and so on. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens and exciting times, no claim. And I've looked at your cards coming up and looks great. So yeah, all the best, mate. And thanks so much for joining us and the insight.
Yeah, that's all good. Thank you.
Winning Edge Investments provides industry-leading horse racing and sports betting tips, ratings and education, enabling you to invest intelligently and treat your betting like a business. Go to www.winningedgeinvestments.com to learn more about how you can start to supercharge your betting bank immediately. Treat your betting like a business and invest intelligently with Winning Edge Investments.